I think that it's in cloud security specifically, we're at a, I think, unique moment in time where we're in a transformational stage. There is room for what was before. Like, it's not right now yet replacing, like, there's like, we need the visibility, we need the detection, but we're at this stage where we're ready to move forward into more of an active doing, secure architecture, policy intent, matching, what the environment should do to what it actually is, built and architected to do. I think it's a fundamental shift that we're right there now, like at that, like on that edge. We're at that pivotal moment to really move things forward in a dramatic way that hasn't happened in probably a decade in this space.
Amit, thanks for making some time for me today.
For sure, always.
So you and I have known each other for a little bit now, a couple of years, on your journey with Native, and we'll talk about that
You
in a while.
forgot the first time we met, if you say a couple of years.
Wait, what do you mean?
We go back, I think it's at least 5.
What? But we didn't spend a lot of time.
No, we didn't spend time. It just like pitched to you back then. But
well, you're going to say that, and then you forget. I'm an old man at this point. I got those senility things. You young folks that actually have memory still. I will wake up and I will forget what I did yesterday. I'm kidding.
Sometimes that's for the better.
Well, so says my wife.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'd love to kind of go back and walk me through just your background, a couple of things, just your background. And I know you served in the military up till when you decided, hey, I want to do a startup. What was that journey like? What was growing up like for you?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to take a step back and think about that. First of all, I think as probably a lot of people, I owe a lot to my parents and the way I was brought up. It was always like a household that sort of, pushed us to do what we want to do and what we love to do, but also push us to be ambitious and to think big. And, very proud of my upbringing, my parents and what that taught me and my siblings and what they're doing in life. So I think those things start from that. Ambition starts from the home. I also moved around a lot as a kid. My father was in the foreign service and I lived in different countries. But then, I think and to that point also, my eldest brother was already an entrepreneur. He's much older. So as a kid, I already had some model as well of that as well at home. But yeah, you're right. It's like the pivotal moment is at 18. Sorry, you were gonna.
No, you got me thinking. So your parents pushing you to excel was, hey, go do a startup or be a doctor, a lawyer. One of those.
No, if you're on this, my brother that I just mentioned, he did a startup in the 90s. It was sold to Microsoft. He was an executive in Microsoft 25 years. He's actually doing his second startup now. My older sister's a cellist and a cello professor and a performer. And my older brother, I'm the youngest, is economics professor in a university. So totally different things. We were never pushed to in a direction, but we just, I think had, just a good home and good parents to learn from and to see and to push us to do what we love to do and to be ambitious in that. And so
that's crazy. I'm gonna have to hang out with your parents because
I'm sorry. This
this is amazing.
This is gonna take a turn. But
please.
They both passed away over the past few years, and also keeps,
sorry to hear that.
Keeps driving me as well. But yeah, it goes. I think it goes back to there. Then 18, joining the Army was a pivotal moment. I joined a lot of founders in this industry, in the space, 8200 at the age of 18. Literally, I was the first sort of recruiting cycle post high school. So I had my high school graduation, and a week later, I enlisted. And pretty much been working ever since. So, and I think the unit 8200, it just opens you up to a whole world of what is possible, and you're just extreme level of responsibility and trust is thrust on you at like a very young age. And I have like vivid memories from of like different projects and different things that I was part of and eventually led, going to officers course, and at the age of 19 or 20 already leading a 15-person team, at the age of 23 50-person team, and at the age of 25 to 150-person organization. So it just gives you a lot of confidence in your ability, and just in both. Technically, you learn a lot, but I think even more so, just organizationally, at a very large age, get exposure to what management and leadership in organizations look like. So that was definitely a big part of it. And then also, like, it pulls you into that ecosystem of the startup mentality. And I mentioned like some of it I saw from home, but you're at the unit. I was there for over a decade, but a lot of friends that left, that discharged over the years that I was there, went into startups, started their own companies. So you get into that ecosystem, and you see and you see that it's possible. It opens up that opportunity for you. Amazing years and amazing experience there, and very proud and happy for what I learned there. But I got to a point where I had to decide, like, am I all in on this, or am I going to go a different route?
On the military.
On the military, yeah. And I decided that, go a different route. And I remember, I was sitting with friends. I was around, getting to 30 and sitting in, friends in the living room. I was still in the military. They were already like decade out, more or less, doing different things. And I'd have great experience, great exposure, doing some of the most amazing, like mind-boggling things and levels of responsibility you can imagine at any age, let alone those ages. But, they would say things like ROI in their conversation. I'd be like, that sounds like a wrong way to spell the name Rui or something like that. And so I figured there's a gap there, and like a good way to make that transition was to go to business school.
Yeah.
And hopefully at Harvard Business School would teach me what ROI stands for, and it did. So I spent a couple of years.
One would hope.
Yeah. Spent a couple of years there, and again, like, amazing experience, opens you up. I think if the unit, like, you go super deep on like something very specific, and it gets so much out of you, like the MBA experience, like, just opens you up to literally a world of possibilities, and the people that are there coming from all different places and experiences, and going, different goals that they set for themselves, and just the exposure to the level of education and the professors there. So again, amazing experience, opening you up, and continues showing you sort of what's possible. And then the next step after that was I joined AWS, and that's where things started to click together. Like bring like the deep technological understanding, the experience in the worlds of cyber, with the business side of it, that I had the education now, but starting to apply it more practically. And I was very fortunate to come into a team and lead a product that was just launching called Amazon Guard Duty. And that was AWS, I think, amazing school for entrepreneurship as well, because very high levels of, again, responsibility. I remember, like, day one, this is yours, this is the product, you own it. Like, what does it mean? Like, end to end, you own the P&L, you work with finance, you're in charge not just the top line, also the bottom line, the product, the roadmap, the strategy, working with.
Was this straight out of school?
This was straight out of business school, yeah. Like, a lot of like respect for who was my manager, and like, I think it's in the culture in Amazon to, like, ownership is such a big thing there, and like, you take it, you do as much as you can with it. It's not for everyone, but if it's for you, it brings out a lot out of you. It was an amazing experience. I joined and we're just getting started, and when I left, it was and not just me, like a whole team as well. Like, it was one of the fastest growing services in AWS history. Definitely the most adopted and largest security service for AWS. A team that grew from, maybe 10 to 15 engineers that helped launch it into at least a 200 plus person organization, with multiple teams that we set up over the years and product lines within the product. So amazing seeing growth from within. It was literally from like seeing growth and going through a lot of growing pains through that from within. But really, I think the most pivotal thing that happened there was the exposure to the customer base and to the problem space. From that seat I had, and this is from 2018. So this is, before anyone coined the term, CSPM or CNAP yet, or before, the large players in the space existed. I was already there seeing both the front row seat or the driver's seat and working day in, day out with the top security teams, security leaders in the world about this on this space, but also getting to see behind the scenes, what, going into the internal systems and seeing what is actually happening in cloud security behind the scenes. And it was that exposure that just got so many wheels turning over the years to I think, really uniquely understand what are the problems and opportunities in that space. And there were just some things that, like fundamentally bothered me that as much as I saw the investments in new companies pop up over the years and do amazing jobs and grow phenomenally. We all know these companies in the space. But still, I'd get on conversations with customers and still I'd see the same problems repeat themselves, both from a security and from a process perspective. And at some point I had that fundamental understanding that the opportunity to really move things forward would be doing it on my own. And sort of the things came together. Sort of that experience, growing up from home, from the military, building that, business understanding, and then working so deeply and closely with customers on such a specific pain point. And things came together where I felt, okay, this is the opportunity that I always felt was coming to do something on my own. And then the real missing piece was a team to do it with. Yeah. And it took me about that's when I said that we actually go closer to 5 years back. There was a moment in time during my AWS journey where I thought now's the time. I felt this pain from the customers that I felt like I was uniquely positioned to help solve. And I started back then already working with different VCs, and at some point they put me in front of you to pitch.
So yeah. All of that, just because you had a conversation and didn't know what ROI was. It had nothing to do. Did you have any competitiveness, or do you have any competitiveness with your brothers and sisters? I would imagine with a not that you're all type A, I mean, but accomplished in various ways. There's a bit of, really, what have you done? Yeah, there's none of that.
No. I swear, no. It's I don't know. We're close, like we're geographically as dispersed as can be. Like I'm actually now my brother that was at Microsoft, he's also in Seattle, and I'm back in Seattle these days. So we're actually closer. But my sister's in Wellington, New Zealand, and my brother's in Glasgow, Scotland. So pretty dispersed in that sense. But no, we're close, and it's very much not it's not competitive between us. Yeah.
Are you telling me you don't send them little emails of hey, we got this fundraise?
No, just pictures of the kids.
Okay, well, we'll have to think of something. Okay. I got to create a little friction. It'll be no.
It's got to be I don't know. It's not there.
That's not okay. Well,
I mean, also
I'm just projecting my own family competitiveness between me and my sister. I guess
I think that's what's happening.
That is exactly what is happening.
I think we're getting to some more you issues here.
Listen, if she was here, it would be a problem. We'd be going at it. So Amazon, obviously, no question about it, very accomplished company. We don't have to talk about that, but building out security capabilities for where companies are going to and hearing their problems and challenges. You spoke to the consistent, repeatable challenges that they're having. What were those consistent, repeatable challenges?
Yeah, I think there were a few things. One was whenever there would be sort of a breach that made the headlines or that we'd hear about internally, and GuardDuty was in threat detection, so it's very high level, monitors logs to detect when is your AWS customer, your AWS environment account workload is potentially compromised. And whenever we'd see there'll be a headline, we'd go for our own analysis behind the scenes and also work with the customers to see, was there detection? Was there a signal? And, I say, just not to say like 10 out of 10, but to leave like some margin for it, I'd say like 9 out of 10, there was a signal. And, it was always also a strong signal. Like, you didn't need to be a super expert that understands the exact environment to pick. You could tell this someone should take a look at this right now. And it was always on time as well. Like, there would have been time to react and at least mitigate the damage. And I, again, to not say 10 out of 10, I'd say 9 out of 10, the damage happened.
They were the customers like kind of upset, or at least looking to you to solve it?
Yes. I mean, the thing that was, it was always around, the signal was there, but the system was not operationalized in a way that allowed, the system is not, also technically, there was just a lot of plumbing, like technical plumbing you have to set up to make sure that, it's operationalized, and also the processes. And it was always, that was always the issue. Like, the signal was there, but it didn't make it to the right person, the right time, was the right context, and to actually do something about it. And it was always around that sort of plumbing operationalization. And that was always also the conversation, I turned it on, now what? Like, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting it to work for you. That's where sort of those wheels started to turn.
And having been there and done that, it wasn't an AWS problem. All of the multi-cloud providers had the same kind of situation. Was that part of the conversations with those customers? Because nobody goes in generally into one provider only. They're usually using multiple.
I think it was like over the years from within AWS, from like the late 2010s until like the mid 2020, like that conception of like single cloud is pretty much dissolved. And I'm actually interestingly seeing that play out now from our seat in native even more strongly, where I'm actually just this past week spoke to a couple of CISOs of large organizations. There were some of the few that, were lucky enough to, hold the line, and the organization predominantly stayed single cloud. And now they're saying, we know the time is up, because we see where the world is going with multi-cloud, multi-model. The business needs a foothold in, Google for some reason, or just increasingly regulatory requirements for resiliency and whatnot, where even those organizations are now seeing things going in multi-cloud direction. And that's a big problem for security. And it was back then. That was also always some of the issues. Hey, we love the products you're building. They're very valuable. But we also have something going on in Azure or in Google or elsewhere, and we don't want to go to 3 or 4 different places to solve the same problem. And that was also repeatedly part of the issue.
So you saw the problem consistently. At what point did you say, hey, I want to go off and solve this problem in a startup versus maybe solving it within AWS or otherwise? There's got to be, was it, hey, I've always wanted to do a startup? You talked about 8200 and that ecosystem of seeing that it's more accessible, because of others have done that. Was that kind of a motivation or creating it, or what was going through your head?
There was always a want to do it, and a feeling that more on the personal level, both the ultimate challenge, from professionally at least, the ultimate challenge, and with it, the ultimate personal test, but also the ultimate, and accordingly, the ultimate gratification, it would only come from there. And that there was like some ceiling that I was, I felt like the ceiling, like I was already like, I felt like operating at like a very fortunate place and at a very large scale and level where I felt like not doing it on my own. Like I was already too close to the ceiling of that challenge and gratification. Whereas doing it on my own, all of a sudden, like the ceiling, like, there is no ceiling.
Yeah. Well, see, I've been very close over like 30 some odd years of doing a startup. And then I talk to people who do it, such as yourself. I go, oh boy, no, that's a lot of pain and a lot of work. That didn't push you back? Or did you see others? You obviously saw others do it. Did that excite you or make you nervous? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I always worked very hard. I somewhat, I think, naively thought that because I'm already like, could easily find myself like working like a 16-hour workday like regularly, then I already know what it means to work hard. And you know, if I work this hard for a company, then like I'd work, you know, I might as well work this hard for a company that I start. But I have to say, but it is fundamentally different. It's not just about how hard you work. The commitment and like is completely different.
It's also emotionally, because you're getting told no a lot, or that's not a problem, or why are you doing this? There's a lot of headwinds of negativity, whether it's from potential customers or otherwise, as you're going through the process, or you know, everybody you talk to was like, no, you've got to do this.
I have to say, like, we came, and we didn't talk about it yet, but as a team, and I think both the team that we formed, our experience and the space and the thought that went into doing what we're doing, put us in a place where going in, we knew already, like I think we were positioned to hear more yes than no.
Well, why don't we talk about that? So when you said, hey, here's the problems, et cetera, you know, how did you get the team, you know, how did the coalition of the willing, so to speak, and kind of walk through that, hey, this is something we want to focus on in a startup?
So I think like the sort of that original go for it, I mentioned I didn't feel like I had the right partners to do it with. I also felt like while I was, there was that itch, was that pain that I was seeing from the customer base, it still was too specific of a problem. And I wanted to make sure if I go to solve a problem, it's a big one that could be evolutionary and, you know, a platform play and not like a point. And both those things were missing, and they actually came together because, so first thing was the team. Like I was lucky for some of the years at AWS to work with Gal, who's one of my co-founders, and he was leading also some of the AWS security products, and we met there, and then through common connections in Israel, I met Eyal Feingold. He was I've known Zal for Alon for a while, who was the CEO of Dome9, and Eyal was the VP of R&D, led the Israel site for Dome9 for many years, and that's how we were connected. And then they were sold to Checkpoint, of course. He was a VP of cloud security at Checkpoint. So that feeling of having, me was my experience in the space, Gal, who is sort of like, just one of those guys who, did his math degree at like 15 and, was like the youngest major in Israeli military history and led all of cyber trainings for 8-1, and then did his MBA at Booth, was like a full scholarship, and then joined AWS, and then having Eyal who's seen this already play out, like the evolution of cloud security from the very start, from like with Dome9, and then, leading engineering and R&D and product teams at a large public company scale that, so sort of it was like, wow, it just felt so right. Like we have the team to actually go after big problems. And then through that, also at that early stage together, tease out what is that big problem? How do how do we pull at that initial thread that we all knew was there and turn it into something big? And it all came together. Yeah.
Was there a timing question for you? Because timing is always part of this. You have the right idea, but the time might not be right. Was that, or that wasn't even a question going into this?
For me, the timing had to do with there's the right problem to solve that the market needs now, and I have the right partners and team to do it with. And all those things came together, and that meant it was the right time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how many did you go through?
Any other way to time it, I think, and you constantly will delay it, because sort of like there's no perfect time to make that jump. But when I felt like it's the right team after the right problem was the opportunity it represented, that was the time.
And you'd already had so many conversations with, that particular case, potential customers because of the AWS, that typical, hey, we're going to found the team, an idea, and go through that ideation kind of process. That was pretty part of the course for where you came from, right?
Like over 5-6 years of like validation of like talking with, practically every security team you can imagine, right? Like if guard duty was ultimately like adopted by over 90% of the top 100, 500, 2,000 AWS customers. That pretty much equates to like over 90% of the Fortune 100, 500, Global 2000. Like that's, that's what it's like at AWS. So yeah, like I was, the amount of conversations and learning I had from the customers before even starting, it was unique.
So I ask you, what is native? What do you do?
Yeah, so I was talking before how I felt there was sort of that thread to pull at, and I started to touch about it earlier around, helping operationalize that cloud security. What does that actually mean? And I think that the understanding we had at that point was that to get cloud security right, it's a sort of all the tools that you need to get cloud security right are already there, waiting for you to use. And that has to do with our name, right? Native, the CSP native security controls. In the end, I think also part of that understanding, we all operated in the detection and visibility space for many years in cloud security. And there was that fundamental understanding that the industry has reached that level of maturity around visibility and detection, and moving more to the stage of, a policy intent driven, a proactive, more of that control. How do we actually operationalize cloud security? No more about, visibility, but actually doing cloud security. And what does that mean to do cloud security? It means you don't come from the outside and you point at what's wrong. You have to go from the inside and actually, go into AWS, go into Google Cloud, go into Azure, Oracle Cloud, and configure and architect the environment with the right policies and configurations and controls in place. The CSP native controls and policy engines, and configure, architect the environment with security embedded natively into it. And that's what we do. We help bridge that gap between, what is that policy intent? What should the environment be? What are the right guardrails in the environment to allow it now to operate securely?
So I would imagine, going back to another point and having been in the seat for quite a while, when you look across let's use a hypothetical, a particular customer or a particular company, you've got 3 multi-cloud providers. They don't all have the same native capabilities to drive policy or configure or manage their infrastructure. Is that an issue?
Yes, absolutely. That's a core part of the issue is that you, we'll get into the single, like, what if you're a single cloud in a moment? I think that's also interesting, but fundamental part of it is I operate across multiple environments. I want to define a security outcome policy intent once. It could be, we should only be, running our applications out of North America, not other places. Or my AI, training environment should not be accessible from the internet because it has no purpose doing that. Those are security outcomes, policies, intents. To translate them into, how do I take that and turn that into an actual enforceable control at the CSP level from within? That's very different across clouds. There's one way to achieve that in AWS. There's a completely different way to achieve that in Google, and etc. And you have now to develop expertise and know-how in each one of those controls to be able to translate that intent into actual controls at the CSP level. And that's a huge problem for enterprises today. Even we're working with some of like the best, most well-funded like cloud security teams in the world, and they're predominantly a single cloud security team. To be able to bring a product like native to them and effectively turn them without having to spend the same number of years and millions upon millions of investment that they have that they developed in their dominant cloud, and we can now extend that to their other cloud environments, is very powerful.
So, okay, so in that hypothetical, you're able to give parity on the capabilities, unify, AWS calls it one thing, GCP calls it another, to give that single dashboard of enforcement. Are there gaps in capabilities in that native concept that you're still seeing? Or, hey, no, 80, 90, 100% of what customers need of policy enforcement, kind of perspective actually is native. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So first of all, when you want to do policy enforcement, you have to go native. Like I said, you can come from the outside and you can point at what's wrong, but to actually architect the environment in a way that enforces your policy, your compliance requirements, your security requirements. I mean, you could build like, proxies to like monitor every API call or network event that goes through and, into your cloud and decide what can pass or what can't pass. But that would not be a very successful venture. Like, who can do that? AWS and Google, and they do that. They build those fundamental capabilities to actually, and then they build on top of that the ability for you to actually go and manage it. But that's where a lot of the complexity lives, and how do you actually manage that at scale and across providers. So, and we see, and that's something around the timing as well. There's been tremendous investment from the cloud providers in those enforcement capabilities. If you go, even 4 or 5 years back, the basic constructs today to enforce policy in cloud environments did not exist. If you go even a year back, a lot of the innovation in this space from all cloud providers has been just in the past year, was new capabilities released, new policy engines released from across cloud providers. So sort of the industry is maturing in that space where we now know what can go wrong. We know it's now more about doing and enforcing. And also the cloud providers, they're listening to their customers, and that's where they're innovating and building the capabilities to enforce it. And those things are coming together now.
So going back to this hypothetical, potential customer, multi-cloud environments, what does an integration look like? Starting from step 0 to day 180. Walk me through what that looks like, technically to a fair degree.
So onboarding is super, like our customers onboard in minutes, on them by themselves. Like they don't need us on the call to onboard. It's mostly just a simple API integration that they're already used to from other cloud security products that they use. So
APIs to the multi-cloud providers, like an AWS GCP.
Give us a read role to the environment, and increasingly, and this is big. Like we can get into the right. Like I'd be happy to discuss like the whole the right permissions that we're being given as well, because I think that is what is starting to move things forward. But giving us the role to understand and read the environment, and then pretty much instantaneously during already the first POV call, you'll start to see. We'll map your environment. We know, have an opinionated view of what secure architecture looks like, tailored for your environment by learning how you use the cloud. What is it used for? What services you're using? What regions you're using? What applications are running there? And then you'll pretty much instantaneously see already a mapping of what good security architecture for your environment looks like and where are the gaps.
How are you able to do that pattern analysis? You're going to say I have 15 services. I go back to a company I've been in. We have tons of them. You're coming in and passing judgment on the architecture of my service.
There are, in some cases,
maybe passing judgment is a little too harsh. That was a little like. I mean, I'm a security guy, so
there are some fundamental things that are just very much, best or basic practice that an environment should be architected in certain ways.
Like high availability environments, latency, back channels.
Yeah, even I'll give like a simple example. It's usually like one of the first things we see customers implement. Some have already implemented, but it goes back also to like guard duty days when I saw like a lot of activity going on and a lot of malicious activity going on regions, data centers that are out of use. So you predominantly run out of a couple of regions in North America and maybe one in the EU, but AWS has like 40 data centers, regions all over the world, South America and Asia and Africa and Europe, and they're all just sitting there open, and anyone can deploy workloads and resources there, like, technically. And the same for Azure and Google and Oracle, and that's a huge attack surface. And we saw that over the years, like crypto mining activity, but even sort of more extreme things where reconnaissance activity, enumerating environments from these regions where no one's looking at, but being able to then enumerate the regions where the actual data resides in, and then when you go to execute the exfiltration, you already know what you know, and you can do it very fast. So we actually saw those things happen. So a basic thing now, in sort of going back to where it was native, we'd come to your environment, we'd say, we identified that you're actually using these set of data centers, regions across your 3 cloud providers. Here's all the ones that you're not using, and we do the analysis and we make sure that it's it's safe to make that recommendation. Here's a very easy, effective way to lock those down. And now it's not no one should be running workloads out of Sao Paulo or Stockholm or whatnot. It's now no one can. And that is a very dramatic difference in an approach to security. Yeah.
And so that assessment, 24 hours after API connection sort of thing? Not even. So there I am. I've got a whole bunch of problems. You're telling me I should lock it down, apply policy. There's some, migration from one thing to another. There's the typical, here are your issues, and here's how we can enforce it. How does that customer go from implementing those policies that you're recommending, or maybe there's things that they want to do bespoke on top of what you're recommending?
Yeah, always room for bespoke, and we work with customers with very unique use cases. First of all, we'll identify even like, are there current, like, when I say what's your current state of policy and controls in the environment, there could be custom things you've done. We'll identify those and be able to translate those into natural language and give you like a view of what is your effective policy, even if it's something custom to you. Not, you said like another typical, here's the list of issues. No, that like we're staying away from that. It's not, here's your list of issues, here's another list of things you have to go fix. That is not our approach. It's more, here are opportunities for you to deploy more secure architecture, and very much not another visibility tool. So we do that first step, like you said, that discovery, the define, and then we'll help guide you on, here's some initial policies, controls you should implement. We will, and then this is a very big piece of it, because everybody wants more secure architecture, right? Like, what's the alternative? Not secure architecture, like, right? It's so logical. But a big part of it is that security that wants to drive that secure architecture is always sort of has at least one hand tied behind its back. What am I going to break, right? Like, if I because this is not around like coming from the outside and pointing and saying, this is wrong, and then security points at someone else, say, hey, go fix it, and you create all that work. This is actually, going and enforcing real controls that define how the environment behaves. So, of course, we understand that. So we invested a lot of research and engineering into building simulation capabilities. So we can now tell security, here's your current state. We did that mapping, that, sort of like discovery stage. Here's a plan. Here's a policy, control you should implement. Here's a simulation. If you implement that in this specific environment, will it be impacted? Will it continue functioning as it has before? And if not, we'll help them identify why not and go and address that. So that unlocks a lot of opportunity for security teams.
Well, I think it's also Well, my question along those lines is, the security team historically are pushing a solution in place, but how do you bring along the rest of the business? How do you bring along the engineers, the product teams, the CTO office, generally running the multi-cloud environments configuration, to get their buy-in? Is there a process for that, or is that?
I mean, I think that, say like, the business is in the business of doing business. It's another thing I learned at Harvard. It's another thing I learned at Harvard Business School. And not in the business of security, right? At the end of the day, like engineering, they want to build products and applications for their customers, their use case, to be able to accelerate their business. The way it works today is that security sits from the side. They have, visibility detection. It's important. They need to know where the risk is to manage it, to drive it down. But then they point it, at engineering and tell them, hey, go fix those things. That's the worst part, time to fix something is when it's already there running, and that creates the most work, the context switching for engineering. So, the existing model isn't great. If now security wants to go and define policy, which to start move things forward into more secure architecture rather than like just detect and fix, they now go to their cloud team, their infrastructure team, and they say like, hey, we want to do a policy that does so and so, and maybe they'll give them like the definition of how the policy should be implemented, and then they'll work with them to implement it. But this also puts now the platform team in the stage of like, well, can we implement it? With the native approach, we give security team sort of the power now to drive that change in the organization and get a lot of points, because now they can come to native, they identify what is the right secure architecture, policy, controls they want to implement. We give them the full sort of plan, recipe for it. They can configure it if needed. They have the step-by-step exactly how to implement it, the Terraform. We give them the simulation. Will anything be impacted? So now they can go to their platform team, their cloud team, and say, hey, here's a policy we want to implement. Here's exactly how to implement it. Here's the Terraform. Here's a simulation that we did to show that nothing will break so we can implement it. And all of a sudden, it's not throwing something over the fence, but it's working together. They do that once or twice. And what we see already during POV sometimes, the platform team seems, okay, like we trust this security you can implement. We give them the ability directly from their product to go and push the changes. And once that happens, that's magic, right? Because now security is actually driving secure architecture. Now engineering on the other end, they start to see less tickets, less issues, less distraction, because they're now operating within the guardrails of that secure architecture, and they don't have to be continuously reminded that they're doing something wrong. And then there's the final piece, right? Because now the environment has the secure architecture baked into it. It was rolled out, the simulation. Things constantly change. The cloud provider launched something new and you need to update the policy. Someone went and changed something, or maybe there's a changing business needs. I'll go back to that example with the regions. You lock down the Singapore region because that's not where you operate out of. And, you're running like a 15,000 person engineering organization in a company. And all of a sudden somewhere there's a business need and something opens up, or some M&A. And all of a sudden someone tries to spin up something in the Singapore region for legitimate reasons. And they can't, because there's now an enforced policy, not you shouldn't, it's you can't. And, where we come in that case is, instead of now just that developer getting, blocked from doing something, they'll now get a notification wherever they live. It's Slack or Teams or whatnot, telling them there's a policy in place that prevented you from doing it. But if you actually need to do it, click here. You can ask for an exception. Goes back to security. They can manage those exceptions, approve those exceptions. Something that at scale can become so complex that they don't even get started with. To operationalize, and through native, that sort of closes that loop. Where now that policy, we're speaking one of the like CISOs of the largest organizations around is saying, policy is a living, breathing thing, and that's how we think about it. It's an operational model, operational system, and that sort of closes the loop.
So you're at this point. You're out. You've got great customers. What has been one or maybe two of the most I didn't expect that kind of moments?
Like I touched on it earlier, but that, like the first time that we saw a customer from the start, we put the button, kind of like apply policy, implement for me, sort of that button. And it was from the start, we said like, philosophically, like it's going to be there front and center. If no one clicks it for 2 years, like it'll be there and they'll know they're not clicking it, and that they're, keeping, they're not, being at the forefront of what is possible. And, first design partner, first like POC, pretty much like first, not like week 1, but week 3, and they clicked that button. Really? And they actually, this was magic for them, because the CISO, the cloud security leaders in that organization, I think it was the first time where they actually moved from, made the environment more secure. They spent years in cloud security. It was the first time they actually did something that resulted in the environment being more secure.
Now, in this particular case, did they all get approvals from the environments and said, hey, we can do this?
Yes. Exactly, through the process I mentioned, where initially they'd go to their platform team and they would push the changes. But in this case already, yes, they had their change management meeting, or they taken, they got the approval, but now the approval was you can go and implement it. So they actually clicked it. Fast forward, a few weeks, couple of months later, and now they're already through those simulations, through the trust they earned. They don't have to go every time. If it's a bigger change, if it's a more fundamental change, maybe yes. But if it's, more, weekly sort of day-to-day policy updates, they already just do it by themselves, and they have that trust both in us and from their counterparts.
Interesting.
That was one, seeing that, like, click that button. I remember that, like, very vividly. Like,
you must have been nervous. Something's going to break. You're in a design partner. I mean,
there was that
design partners for a reason,
you
right?
see this, wheel spinning, and no, but the result of that button being clicked was that there was a change, architectural change in the cloud environment, and it's now more secure. And that, like, almost like comically, doesn't really happen in security.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things about this. The narrative for me is we've been in a detective corrective control set for a long time, and we haven't had preventative controls. Creates excessive labor insecurity in other engineering teams. We need more preventative controls, in a lot of ways, and I think we're starting to see them come up in the industry very recently. But doing prevention is not an easy thing to do, technically, culturally, and then, of course, if something goes wrong, especially with firewall management, everybody's pointing fingers at each other, like, no, you broke my rule. And so from a development standpoint, a testing, a design, a partnership, that implementation of policy, were you surprised that it was easier than you expected it? Using this story as an example, because I expected it to be right in line with what you were saying of, they're not going to click that until year 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I want to touch on prevention in a moment. I think, like, I see things like as, prevention sounds like what you can do. And I think I like to think about, culture, about like defining what you can do and how, people, when you think about policy, it's, it's not, policy usually isn't about what you can't do. Like, it's more around how things should be done in an effective way. And I think, like, we like to think about it in that way, but the end result in many cases is, yes, like, things that would have, bad things that would have happened don't happen. And that's important. I think when you're asking, like, if we were worried to see, like, would they, I think we're there. I think, like, security, like, there's an appetite for it increasingly. It's not for everyone yet, but early adopters, forward-thinking, advanced security teams, they tend to be work at some of the largest enterprises, because that's where a lot of the top, people in the industry are. There's an appetite for it. There's a readiness for it. I think and then they're waiting for it, and then they meet us and we enable it.
Well, I mean, we've talked about paved roads and had these phrases for a long time of, like, how do we bake in security into environments? Less about the security teams. Every conversation I have with a product leader, they're like, listen, will you just set it and forget it? Give me that paved road and let me get back to building the product. But there haven't been any ability to do that outside of really significant labor, and it's not really enforceable in a lot of ways. And it sounds like you're able to bring that statement to reality.
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
Yeah.
But it's really, there's words and then there's actions. Hey, we're actually implementing those policies in reality for your customers now, which is really exciting. But the reason why I bring that up is it's less about the desire of the security team and more about the, oh my God, finally from the product and the other teams that own the services on top of the infrastructure.
Yeah, and even if you go a level above that to like the strategic view of the business, when you do something like that, you now all of a sudden enable a business to, that strategically wants to go deeper into multi-cloud architecture to do that. I've heard, CISO say like, we're predominantly, let's say on AWS, but we increasingly want to be, have a footprint in Google Cloud. And in fact, engineering is there. They can go there. And it's, now security can be maintained the same level of security controls and standards as we expand to Google Cloud. One option is to go and spend again, like build the same level of expertise and, build out the team that you built for and everything. But the ability now to use native, and I'm hearing from CISO saying to go to my CEO, to my CIO, CTO board and say, hey, if the business needs to go to Google, they can go to Google, like, and we can support that. Sort of, I think about like a multi-cloud, multi-model world, and security being able now to strategically go to their leadership and say, we can go in the cloud wherever we need to go to meet our business objectives, and we won't have to compromise on security standards. And I don't need now to hire another 10, cloud security experts. That's strategic.
So I got to ask, I mean, and I'm actually kind of curious about this. I don't know from the competition standpoint, typically there's incumbents and then there's other competitors, startups. In your space, how do you differentiate?
From the incumbent, like
just generally, because I don't think there's a lot of incumbents in a multi,
exactly.
So that's why it's interesting. There could very well be other startups. How do you differentiate from those competitors?
First of all, I think like we our experience and allowed us to identify a unique pain and opportunity at a unique time where we were able to, I think, really trailblaze in that sense. When you speak of, when you say cloud security, intuitively people think there's already solutions in that space. When we get to, our approach to it and what we actually do, and we speak with the real practitioners and leaders that are forward in this space, they immediately get it. There's no confusion that, this is something unique. And then as expected, what often happens is, like when there is a unique opportunity in the market to move things forward and to help customers, then naturally, like other companies will pop up, to capitalize on that opportunity.
Yeah. What is the one thing, if you wanted the audience, what is the one takeaway that you wanted them to have about native?
I think that it's in cloud security specifically now, we're I think unique moment in time where we're also talking about it a lot with analysts, and we're seeing them also increasingly lean in, that we're in a transformational stage. There is room for what was before. Like it's not right now yet replacing, like there's like, we need the visibility, we need the detection, but we're at this stage where we're ready to move forward into more of an active doing secure architecture, policy intent, matching, what the environment should do to what it actually is, built and architected to do, giving security the ability to, security teams the ability to do security and not just, see. Like, I think it's a fundamental shift that we're right there now, like at that, like on that edge. And on that edge are like our early customers and partners that are mature in this space and are like leading it, taking it forward. Everyone but it's picking up steam. Even going back a year now, I'm seeing like the conversations are, across the board different, the appetite for it. We're at that pivotal moment to really move things forward in a dramatic way that hasn't happened in probably a decade in this space.
Amazing. How's it like working with the cloud providers? I mean, you came from one. I'm sure the relationships are great.
I mean, it's strategic. Like that is one of like the most important things for us, right? It's like, it's such an intuitive, like better together story. Like we're coming to.
So they don't see you as a threat.
Oh, I mean, just this more like, won't go into all the details, like just the conversations across different business lines and different contexts that we've had was, you know, all four cloud providers just the past week is amazing. Like it's a deep strategic partnership in all aspects. Like we make them better, they make us better, and we work very closely, and we're building those relationships with them. Of course, we bring some from our experience, but you know, across the providers, very deep. It was our one of our earliest hires was a partnership in BD, lead VP Nama, exactly because we understood this strategic importance and to start that early. And our customers are our joint customers are benefiting from it.
That's really interesting here because, you know, there's one thing of, hey, we can help bring in native to kind of provide that customer security, but you came from Guarded. You were creating the security capability. Those teams don't go, hey, but we can do it for you. Or is it just a different value prop because you're going across multiple cloud providers, creating that, I hate to use the word single pane of glass. I've always hated that, but that single policy across all of them is that
single control plane.
That's right.
Thing. But I think one, like the ultimate goal of the cloud providers is, yes, they want to build great security products and build a security business. It's a good business to be in. But ultimately, they're in the cloud business. And what's fundamentally strategically important for them is that their clouds or their customers building on their clouds are secure. That's why they're investing in the space. And that's why they ultimately want their customers to use the capabilities that they're building in the ultimate way so that they operate securely in those environments. And God forbid one cloud, you know, all of a sudden the cloud provider is perceived as the less secure cloud. That's like number one. And we help that, right? Because they're building the fundamental building blocks to get security right. And we're helping customers put those together and operationalize them across providers. So everyone's benefiting. On top of that, it's what you're referring to, where it's a different problem set. We're in a multi-cloud world. The fact that we're helping customers operate and leverage the built-in controls is ultimately a win at the local level for the product teams that we're working with, and then at the more strategic level, as I mentioned as well.
Awesome. So I asked you earlier about timing of doing the company and all the problems, and you kind of told me of customers having that challenge. But let me go back to that. Is why now? Why is now the time that native or the solution set that you're talking about is really relevant?
You know, like I mentioned earlier, like the maturity, both of the cloud providers and the enforcement capabilities, both of the industry and the practitioners to move to that next evolution or that next phase. But I think also there's pieces of it that have to do with AI, and it touches on like several aspects. One, that increasing like multi-cloud reality. Part of it is like strategic, like, you know, we want a footprint in the different cloud providers for their different AI. So we're seeing increased multi-cloud adoption, and one of the reasons being AI. We're seeing also, and this is like even some pretty recent analyst reports around the speed of attacks. We're in a world where the attackers move at AI speed. And you know, I say like this isn't really new, because before they were moving at the AI speed, they were moving at API speed. You just add that P in the middle. That's still really fast for to react to. But increasingly in an AI-driven attack world, detection and response loses even more of its efficacy, and you want the right preventive controls. Otherwise, it's too late. Like you lost. And then finally, also our ability to move fast in this world, like. There's, you know, we're not in it, you know, like we're not like an AI security company. Like we believe like there's a fundamental problem that we're solving, but behind the scenes in the product, there's AI baked into multiple parts of it that allow us to do things uniquely, understand the environment, analyze the environment, do the simulations, translate policy documents into natural language intents, and vice versa. AI is baked into all of it. This wasn't possible a year or two ago. And where we see things are going, we're already hearing from CISOs tell us, I had my let's call my 5-person single cloud security team, all of a sudden feels like with native, they're a 20-person multi-cloud security team. How do we, continuously leverage AI to now go from, a 20 to an 80 to a 200, how was native in the mix? How do we leverage what AI is now giving us to effectively, create a 200-person, multi-cloud security team? That scalability in what it's giving us. And we're seeing it everywhere and making sure that we constantly stay at the forefront of what is possible.
Interesting. How does anybody get in touch with you guys? If somebody's interested in learning more, where do they go? What do they do?
Native.security is our website. You can through there reach us. Amit at native.security is my email. And,
that's it?
Yeah.
That's it? Pretty straightforward.
Amit, Megiddo, D, MEGIDD on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect.
I'm sure there's a song that they go D.
MEG.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you asked before, by the way, on like 2 moments, and I gave one. And I think another one was when we were invited to present to one of the top, top banks, largest companies in the world, all the way up to their like CIO level, very high level, and all the like senior people in the room that are sort of the forefront of what innovation is in the security and the infrastructure space. And we got, basically 10 minutes to share what it is we're doing, and another 5 minutes to show a quick demo. And they, we were done within minutes. They sort of deliberated. We were out the room. They called us back in, and they made an on-the-spot decision that they want to go into POV with us. And that was magical, because this was both a huge opportunity for where we are now, but also getting that validation, that on-the-spot validation that rarely happens from such a partner is amazing. So that was another real magical moment in that. And then I think another use case we're seeing where we can provide a lot of value is M&A happen. There's some companies that they operate in M&A strategy, and our ability to standardize controls, not just multi-cloud, but across disparate cloud environments within a cloud organization. If you have multiple cloud organizations, M&A, you bring on another company into your company, you're bringing on a new cloud environment, with its own controls and policies and issues in it. The ability now to very quickly understand what is their effective cloud policy, how does it map to our standards, and now replicate our standards to their environment in a very fast and safe way is another amazing use case that we're helping with.
I've lived through that problem in almost every company when we're doing like 5-6 acquisitions a quarter. I mean, that is a real problem. You have all the children at very different stages of maturity forever.
Yes, like another magical moment we had was a POV, was a very very Fortune 100 tech company, and we're working with the practitioner there, hands-on, and AWS expert. They have some Google, they have some Azure, like always, some work, and he went during the POV. We're on the call with him, and he did that implemented policy on Google, and said, "Wow, I just implemented a security control construct on Google Cloud, and I've never even gone into Google Cloud. I don't know how it works, but it looks and feels exactly the same, and you can literally take my control that I implemented in AWS and spend a lot of time learning how to do it, and making sure it's safe to implement and replicate it almost instantaneously to Google Cloud without knowing Google Cloud."
Yeah.
It's magical.
That's awesome, because that SME labor skill set for each and every provider is part of the problem that customers have. Is I need to have an expert on GCP and another person expert on AWS.
We're hearing from customers that's part of the way they're justifying budget this early for a product like this. They're saying we were going to hire 2 or 3 Google Cloud security experts, we're going to now just hire one and, put two to the side and try to go as native.
Yeah.
And that just by itself, like, is a big efficiency. And that's just the start. Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything else? Make sure that you're good?
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thank
awesome.
you.
Thanks, Amit.
Pleasure.